Peace, everyone. So I just got this warning, and it's very important to listen to your intuition in this particular phase in which you are navigating collective. Now, collective, let's be honest, it's always important to listen to your intuition. But I feel like where we are collective, because there's a lot of people in a precipice of a new beginning. Okay. You're jumping off board off of your old life into what is new and what is true. Now, I've spoke about, because messages came through. This is the part of the story where your enemies start being nice to you. Yes, but with an agenda. Okay, there's an agenda to it, and the reason why your enemies or opposition is being nice to you is because ultimately they're fools, they're desperate, and they're trying to attach to what does not belong to them. And you know, logical mind is just not there for them. Okay. So people operating out of logic, right? Adversary energies, they're refusing to do the work. And ultimately, everyone is going to be forced to clean up their own mess and do the work. Okay. So hopefully you're doing it ahead of time. And the reason why it's important is because you have a lot of beautiful, beautiful, abundant energy. But the first card that came out is sap. Okay. And SAP is saying like they're desperate. Right now, they have no resources. And it may not look that way for you in this particular point in time in your life, but you're very abundant. You have a lot of resources. You have a lot of things that um, are coming your way, whether they physically manifested in your reality or not. And believe that they're just know that they're coming. Now, the SAP for resources, they need materials in order to continue this existence, okay? And it's it's very much an energy of they're at the end of the rope, okay? If they choose to continue on this, but it doesn't mean excuse me, if they choose to continue on the path that they're currently, going down, it's not going to play out well for them. And for you, it's not necessarily going to stop meant to come to you, but it can delay it. Okay. It's essentially if you consent to these traps that they have, you can be setting yourself back. And you may not necessarily have a direct message from spirit, right? This is where now spirit is allowing you to use your wisdom and intuition. So let's say someone makes an offer, somebody wants you to join a program or something like that. If there's something that made you feel funny about it, if there's something that made you, pause, if someone's inviting you out, for evening in the town, and it's like, oh, I just like right now, I know my energy can't be around this person. Listen to that. You don't need to know why. Just understand that your instincts are guiding you to protect you. Okay. And this is an aspect of honoring what you are hearing, what you are feeling, what you're picking up, because you haven't heard yourself before. And look, the card that came out was microphone, right? So to me, this is speaking to first card that came, or the first thing that came out to me was like strong opinion, the feelings of your gut. See, you haven't always listened to your gut in the past, and you put yourself in situations, willingly, right? For the sake of not offending others. And it winded up making you being delayed or having to deal with things that are not yours, right? Where people were, essentially clearing karmas off for others. This is not where this is going. This is a time where now you've come into your authentic self, right? And you're honoring that. However, there are still pullings of the wounded self that want you to remain small, want you to remain hidden, want you to, be complacent to somebody else's desire, somebody else's willpower. Okay, this is not this is not where we're at collective at this time. If you've been doing the work, then it's time that you operate out of the work that you've been doing by showing up for yourself, by honoring your voice. Okay. This is where it's at collective, listening to your own voice, listening to what your intuition is telling you, whether, you know, a spirit isn't telling you, oh, okay, well, if you decide to go to this program, this will be taking away from you and taking away from, opportunities that can be in alignment. And I feel like, that's where it's going. Oh, if, um, if you go out on the town with this, particular friend, now this friend is going to be, showing up constantly trying to be a blockage to the opportunities, right? That are meant to come your way, or even the experiences that you're meant to have. Let's say that your spiritual gifts are about to, have this beautiful increase, but now your friend is calling you at, at nighttime, trying to, drain your energy, but you're like, no, this doesn't feel right, right? um and it's causing you to miss, pivotal points, right, where the divine could have, aligned particular moments for, for your gifts to grow. So it's about being very wise. The next card that came out is the oak tree. So this is about the roots that you've established, you know what I mean, within yourself, right? The depths that you have gone to. Not everyone has built, those roots. In building these roots, okay, this is life, right? Trees ultimately represent oxygen. They give oxygen to the environment. They allow us to breathe, okay? A lot of people are drowning in their traumas because they haven't been able to do the work. They don't feel like they can necessarily breathe, right? But you have a strong foundation. So they're looking to attach to you for, and I said, again, they have no resources. A tree is very abundant in resources, and it's a network, right? So when we think about the roots, trees are always connected and, intermingling together, right? Sharing knowledge, sharing resources. So those that have gone underground to essentially establish those roots, now this is where the tree is sprouting, and so these resources are going to be more evident, right? The next card that came out was Fairy Tale. I'm telling you, I've never seen this card before. Um, and that's the unicorn. Okay, I sure enough do be working with Unicorn Totem. So this is the moment where you're just allowing yourself to dream of the life that you want. This is where um your happily ever after. No, I mean it could be, it truly can be your happily ever after, but this is also where it's a vibration so high, right? Unicorns can't be perverted, they can't be like, it's just a such a high vibration that can't be attained, right? From, like opposition, right? And those that are seeking to get into, your energetic field, right? So this is the reality that you are crafting. This is a reality where I'm not talking about everything's going to be whimsical and the sun's just going to be shining at the right time, hitting your face consistently. No, but you're going to have that vibration of peace and happiness and joy within yourself. And guess what, that's a resource that many people are starving. They're starving for those resources. They're starving for that inner peace. They're starving for mental clarity. They haven't received it. They haven't been able to attain it. We got the fine print card that came out again, and again, this is for the opportunities. This is just to make sure that, again, they're sapped, right? From resources. Then we got the microphone. You listening to your gut. You honoring your voice. The oak tree, which is speaking to the roots, okay, that you've established. The fairy tale, the life that you are entering into. The energy. Your energy is becoming very magnetic, okay, and you are going to be unresistible. However, with that, again, opposition is looking to, how can we get, some of what she got? How can we get some of what he got? Guess what? You read the fine print. I was recording a message yesterday, and I was basically saying, these messages, and for this person that I'm speaking to, and for the fine print to come up again, okay, that means I don't know how quick certain things are going to be changing for you. But understand that they might be looking to control you. They might be looking to, you know, um, tell you how to dress. They might be looking to, tell you what you can speak on. Essentially, when people talk about like in the industry, like kind of like selling your soul, it's because they can control you. Okay, they can use you to do whatever they want you to do. This is where, no, I need to keep my autonomy, I need to keep my freedom, right? And I'm not saying this is going to be an industry thing for someone. I'm really not sure, right? But again, when you're out in the media, you are known, you are being seen. And for someone, this is someone that's meant to be seen by a big populace. Okay, that's what I'm getting. um then so just be careful with the commitments that you get into. Okay, and who you decide to work with, that's very important. um and this the next card that came out is symphony. Okay, so this is the music that, again, transverses the subconscious. This is co-creation. This is, the symphony is always, it's a beautiful ballad, but it's also something that's very structured and organized, and understanding that you have been the one organizing things, or so it seems, right? From the earth plane in a certain kind of way, but the divine is the one that really has that hand. Is the divine that's orchestrating everything. Okay, and it's unfolding in beautiful ways, right? So this is your co-creation coming into your reality, coming into your energetic field, right? Your physical embodiment is going to start experiencing it, and it's very very rich, right? Because the next card that came out is emerald. First of all, I love emerald. Emerald is one of my favorite stones. Green is my favorite color. This is speaking to, I feel like, abundance, right? Upgrades, like on a heart chakra level, right? The heart chakra ultimately sparkling. The heart chakra being real sparkly, right? This is where you doing the work to unburden your heart chakra, all right? And in unburdening your heart chakra, these are where now experiences that ultimately make your heart chakra glow and grow. Okay, this is what you're moving into. You're moving into a very, like, because you've done the healing work, you're moving into a very fertile stage within your root chakra experience, right? Kind of like from heart to root, from root to crown. Um, you've honored the spiritual being that you are. And in honoring the spiritual being that you are, you've been able to unburden yourself. You've been able to become a new person outside of the traumas. And so this is where now, you've been able to find this balance within, and you're free, and you're allowing yourself to be free flowing. You're allowing yourself, ultimately to use the wisdoms of your past experiences to cultivate new insights, to cultivate new experiences, in this earth plane experience, in this life that you're living. Um, and an emerald, to me, it's very rare. Okay, an emerald, it's also very precious. An emerald is a stone that, um can be scratched. Can definitely be damaged more as easily than a diamond. And this is where, your crystalline energy, as long as you continue to, be on the path, that's secured. Your earth plane, this is a much more delicate process that is secured for you as well too. But again, it's how you are moving in this earth plane experience, right? And then we got the pearl, which is my birthstone, which I love. um this is, I do feel like this is, pearl can like speak to purity. It speaks to our intuition, um the moon, the divine feminine energy. It's very magnetic, it's a very classy, it's a very classy stone. Like crystal stone, we're gonna call it a stone. It's a very classy stone, and it allows, you know I feel like you become the pearl. I feel like you become that classy refinement of self. I feel like you have ultimately allowed yourself, to shine correctly, to be refined, to be smooth around the edges, to have this beautiful magnetic but softness. I feel like this is very divine feminine. I feel like this is speaking to the soft era, the soft life that you are creating. And again, emeralds and pearls coming out, those are very abundant, they're pricey, they're costly. So this isn't just, cheap material. This is where now you are worthy. You know what I mean? You are carrying yourself like you know your worth because you do. And then we have the well, okay? Because the well is always hydrating the community. This is where the well is now giving, nourishing the land, nourishing, those that are ultimately around, right? To receive the knowledge. You are a well of knowledge. You are a well of insights from the divine. You are a well of wisdoms. You are, a well of compassion, and there is a lot of insights and that you can give people, but also you can show people, how to attain the life of their dreams. As you're attaining the life of your dreams, you are leading by example. And this isn't about like, oh, everything is going to be perfect tomorrow. This is talking about you being authentic to yourself, is allowing your life to unfold in the way that it was always meant to blossom, in the way that it was always meant to bloom. Okay, it's very important that in this season, because of what you are carrying, what you have crafted within yourself, that you are moving in in such respect and regard to your intuition, because your intuition are also warnings from the divine that are letting you know this isn't right, you know. And I'm not sitting here saying that, where you're at in your life, you may not have to be dealing with certain things, you know what I mean? But if it's not completely necessary, don't do it. Okay, if it's not, and when I'm saying don't do, if it's not completely necessary and you have a bad feeling about it, don't do it. Okay, this is where, even you might be being offered resources, right? Because even though they're lacking in material, right? Really, like, opposition, the enemies are lacking in material. They've tried to project that upon you and made it look like you were lacking in material and resources, and you're not. And your life's about to change. And so, understanding that they're trying to get you to a particular position or point where you stay in the position that they tried to craft for you, honey, that's not where it's going. Have faith, stay strong. Okay. All right. So, thank you for listening to this message from me and the divine. This was important for the collective to hear because, oh, excuse me, hold on. I had to sneeze, but it won't come out. This is just important for the collective to hear, okay? So you don't go back to paths that are not serving you. All right, so take care from me in spirit. Peace.